Good morning. Thanks for being with us this morning. I've got some of my fellow senators here to talk about some issues today. I want to run through some of the brief issues that we will probably be looking at here, at least in the next couple of weeks, if not this week. Immigration. Senator Hill, Judson Hill, has a bill that we believe will be moving rather quickly, and we hope to get to the Senate floor soon, dealing with some enforcement mechanism on the side of not just public employers, but contractors doing public work with taxpayer dollars. And of course, a lot of this stems from the ugly situation at the Cobb County Courthouse. Senator Hill, of course, represents that area, and he has a bill that I guess would be in the area of illegal immigration and how we enforce the laws that are already on the books. And we hope to be seeing that bill rather soon. The tax reform measure, we had our first joint hearing on that last week. We're going to continue to take that slowly and make sure that we have a full understanding among all members as to what was in the recommendations before our bill's even drafted. So that process will move and continue to move, but it'll move slowly. The issue of technology in the classroom came up last week, and I know sometimes we hear things and we like to think of that as just perhaps a discussion on iPads, but it's really much broader than that. We recognize in these times where budgets are short, we spend almost 6 out of every $10 in the Georgia budget on some form of education in this state, that we've got to find ways to do things better at a lower cost. And undoubtedly, the use of technology in the classroom can increase results and allow us to deliver education services at a lower cost. So on that topic, I want to let Senator Williams talk about some of the things that we're looking at, and we're working hand in hand with the school superintendent on this issue.
As I mentioned with many of you a few days ago, we've met with Apple. We're meeting with some other suppliers of technology to do some pilot programs. There's some monies available currently in our budget for school improvement and Race to the Top money that could be used as the impetus for grants to encourage local systems to come to the table, partner with us to do some classrooms, particularly in the middle school, with new technologies such as the iPad. This has been done in some schools around the state already, as some states have actually gone full scale with it. So we're going to measure the results of this, and hopefully it'll be good. We think it will, and then broaden that out as we have funds available.
And then one other area we want to touch on today, as the state looks at where we can find savings, we're compelled to make sure that we're not wasting money anywhere, and we're compelled also to make sure there's not waste, fraud, and abuse in the system. And I think everyone who has come in touch with the Medicaid system in Georgia recognizes the potential for waste, fraud, and abuse. And on that note, we've had a couple of senators who have begun working on this and have brought to the Senate some great ideas on how we can get after this waste, fraud, and abuse and end up saving the taxpayers some money and making sure that those Medicaid dollars go only to those people who are eligible to receive them. So with that, I'll introduce Senator William Liggett.
Thank you, and good morning. As you know, Medicaid fraud has been a problem nationally and in the states. And in fact, some estimates are that we're losing maybe 10.5% of what's being spent to fraud. Some studies out of Harvard indicate that amount could be even larger. The state of Georgia spends about, in the state, we spend about $10 billion on the program, and the state pays 40% of that. So you can imagine the savings that could occur if we could only catch 5% of the fraud. And this fraud occurs both on the provider side through double billing, errors in billing. There are instances where the cards are passed from one person to the other, and then it's passed on down the line. There's no accountability in how the system is being operated. And what we're wanting to do is to bring some innovative technology into the program to help stop the fraud before it ever occurs, so that we can save the taxpayers money. Just last year in the state, prosecutors recovered about $26 million in funds that had been fraudulently paid out. But we think that much more just simply slid under the table, and we need to do what we can to recover that amount. And I'd like to turn it over to Senator Albers to talk about the technology that will be used to help stop this fraud.
Thank you. Good morning. We're excited to use enhanced technology in order to prevent Medicaid fraud. And the first part of that will be introduction of a smart card for Medicaid. Medicaid patients today already have a card. They're used to having a card. This integrates a computer chip into the card. On that chip will be information about the patient, including a digital photograph, which will be one means of what's called multi-factor authentication. Another thing they'll have to do when they get to the doctor's office is submit their fingerprint, which will then go off of a state database which is separate from the card. Using these two mechanisms, we will assure that the person who is there to get the services is the actual person. It will also help to collect that data back in the databases so we can do more electronic auditing and prevent the fraud, as William mentioned, from both the provider all the way to the end user. This program is proven technology that has been used in other industries in the past, and we're excited about implementing it here to save the state tax dollars. Thank you.
All right, well, Senator Williams, you want? We'll open it up to questions.
Senator Elders, do you have any idea of what it'll cost to put that card system in place?
We're working with several different folks right now, but as you know, it will go out to bid to multiple vendors, and we'll be working with the managed care providers for both the card, which is relatively inexpensive, as well as the readers, which will cost less than $200 in a doctor's office.
So this is a done deal. This isn't going through legislation or anything?
Oh, no, we are introducing legislation today that will begin this process.
But you're going to go ahead with the RFPs before that?
No, we have a pilot program that is
Oh.
going to be a part of the legislation.
And then why not just driver's licenses or state ID cards that we require them for voting? They have pictures on them. Is that why is that not enough?
Well, with the addition of smart card technology, there's actually a computer chip on this card. There's data on that card. You do not have that on your driver's license today.
What is the data going to say?
Well, the data will have information about the patient on there. So if I went to present my card at a doctor's office, it'll have information about me, including a digital photograph. So when that card is put in there, they'll actually identify me as being that person who is there, as well as the addition of the fingerprint. Again, that's called multi-factor authentication that banks have been using for many years now.
Now, would it have any medical information like blood type or medical allergies?
It'll have basic information for life-saving, but also protecting privacy.
Do you know any other states that are using this right now?
There are a couple that are piloting it right now.
Which ones?
I believe it's
Kentucky and Wisconsin, I believe.
Right, Kentucky and Wisconsin.
You mentioned the use of fingerprints. Georgia for many years required people to put fingerprints on their driver's license, and the General Assembly decided that was not a good thing to do and repealed that law. What do you see as the difference between putting a fingerprint on a Medicaid card and a driver's license? We're talking about really the same thing, aren't we?
Well, two reasons. One is they're getting a free service. And the second part is we're actually not taking an image of the fingerprint. We're using new digital technology that actually takes the points off of the fingerprint.
Each time they go to the office.
Correct.
What would you say to somebody who might say, well, look, to go pick up on Tom's question, if people say we don't want our fingerprint on our driver's license, the Assembly listens, but if you're talking about poor people, then we're just fingerprinting them.
Well, actually, this is going to help those who need Medicaid the most. If we can preserve the system and save money, that is good for the people that actually need it. So I would turn that around and say this is actually better for them.
I guess I still not clear on why a driver's license or a state ID card, which is enough for voting, it's got your picture on it. Why is a photograph? Why is that not enough to identify somebody?
Well, because fake IDs are used today. As you know, our law enforcement are constantly struggling with preventing people from having fake IDs. Having multi-factor authentication eliminates that.
But do we check for driver's licenses, photo IDs now when you go to
There are also
Medicaid?
children in the Medicaid system that don't have driver's license.
They can get a state ID card though, right, at that age, so I think.
Well,
suppose
also,
they could.
the fingerprint is not kept on the card. The fingerprint is in the database.
Okay.
And when the person comes in, they'll put their fingerprint in the scanner, and that's matched to what's in the database.
If this went statewide, beyond the pilot program, and you did it statewide, what would be the cost to the state itself? Not just to the providers or anybody, but what would the state's share of this cost be if you went statewide?
Estimated cost to implement the program is about $26 million. And then there'd be a fee for each scan, and that would be a matter of pennies. And of course, that could vary from vendor to vendor, so there would be bidding on that.
But y'all expect we would make more than the 26 million back?
Significantly.
Yes, I mean, if we recovered $25, $26 million last year just from prosecutions, then imagine what was missed.
And one thing I would also say about the driver's license, that is an issue we talked about when we went through voter ID. And if you recall, the entire population doesn't have a Georgia driver's license, so we created the voter ID card as well, recognizing that there are certain people who simply don't have a driver's license, and there's a cost associated with both obtaining a driver's license and obtaining the state ID card. So this card would be separate to that, because you have some people on Medicaid that don't drive, which makes sense.
A clarification on the cost, you said 26 mil. Is that a startup cost, or is that a cost yearly?
That's going to be with the startup cost, I'm sorry, with the startup cost and the scanners, and then the yearly cost would be part of the maintenance fee that's charged with each transaction. So,
And that would be self-supporting?
yes,
The fees would pay for it every year?
it should save hopefully millions of dollars.
So could you be any more specific on the possible savings, what you guys think you might
Well,
recover with this program?
the target would just be 3%, and just factor out 3% of $4 billion, and you'll have it.
You gotta talk to the doctors, the medical association, are they on board with this idea?
In my conversation with a number of doctors discussing the issue of card swapping, lots of providers will tell you this is a very prevalent problem. When one Medicaid recipient gives her friend or his friend a card, and the doctor has no way of identifying that person except them saying, this is who I am. We want to authenticate that. The other issue is phantom billing, when the card is swiped and the patient was actually not seen. If they give their fingerprint, they go see the provider, come back out from seeing the provider, re-fingerprint. We know there's a lapse of time that some procedure should have taken place, and we can authenticate that billing. There's also a need to make sure that folks are not doctor shopping, just going from one doctor to another trying to accumulate a certain type of drug. So we could follow that to make sure that didn't happen. Lots of fraud in the system. This is a great effort on behalf of these freshmen to clean up this. And I think Senator Albert said it's best. The people that it really helps are as we are in a number of years of budget crisis, we have the federal government telling us that this population is going to expand. We need to be taking care of only those people who legitimately are eligible for Medicaid, and not folks who are not.
We've got time for just a couple more
Are
questions.
we going to see Sunday sales on the floor this week, and when?
We're not going to see Sunday sales on the floor this week. I'm not sure how that rumor started, but we have not even had a caucus discussion about it, and so it's not we won't be seeing it this week.
I want to go over to technology in schools. Y'all mentioned there would be some pilot projects in the state. Can you say where those would be? Give a few more details about the pilot projects. How much will they cost?
Well, the cost, this is just on the Apple side, is about $500 a kid, but that includes all the curriculum, the training of the teachers, Wi-Fiing the system, upgrading the system every 3 years, et cetera. What we want to do is take some federal monies that we've gotten through Race to the Top for technologies and school improvement money. We've spoken with the new superintendent as well as the governor's folks about this, to take some of those monies, which are existing monies, put in the budget as a participation grant program, and we'll probably focus on those schools that are having problems now.
Can you give me geographically some idea where you're
I've talked to the superintendent about spreading this around the state, but to focus on those low-income communities that are not performing well as a beginning point.
What about other e-readers? You mentioned that Apple was just one of other folks that you may be reaching out to and realizing that other e-readers might be cheaper. Are there other folks that you've reached out to that you could?
We have Hewlett-Packard as well as Microsoft have talked to us. Other folks in the business, and it could be a combination of technologies. You know, we're trying not to dictate that. It sort of fits the community and their specific need and how much money they want to spend. So we'll put it out there in a variety of forms and let the locals help decide what it is they need.
So would the locals put out the bids for this? How would the actual selection and payment work?
Well, we'll develop that in the grant program. It's still a little early to know that at this point.
What do you suppose that the technology will do for the kids that is not being done now? How will it help?
Well, it helps them to learn like they're currently learning after they leave the school and get in their mom's car, and that's digitally. And we're still teaching them like we were taught 40 years ago, and it's time we move into a new century.
Do you anticipate any state money being used for this program, or how would that work? You mentioned federal.
Well, these are monies that are available for school improvement now, so we think it's an appropriate use of the money.
So
Are you
state money
concerned?
for federal, state money for school.
These are race to the top monies, which we were awarded last year, I believe, as well as school improvement monies that we're spending on other methods. For better or worse, we think this is the right use and appropriate use.
Are you concerned about
This will be the last one.
a liability to parents? I mean, these are, very expensive pieces of equipment in the hands of, teenagers.
Well, everybody has to replace their phone at different times for different reasons, and insurance is available at about $30 for a iPad per year. So, there'll be some way of insuring against theft and damage and whatever might happen.
And I'll just follow with one closing statement on the way kids learn. I had a chance to take part in Governor Bush and Governor Wise' council this year on digital learning. And, I guess everybody in this room's been around for a little while. They just learn in a totally different way than we learn. And if I know when my kids come home, they don't come home and pick up a textbook. The first thing they do is they come home and fight over who gets to pick up my iPad or the other laptops that we have at home. I mean, this is the way that they are learning. And instead of trying to meet them in an area where they don't learn, we ought to meet them in an area where they do learn. And if you just think about all the things that are possible with digital learning, about how you can tailor an education to a specific child, it is amazing what we can accomplish. I mean, just think of the very rudimentary things. When you pick up a textbook and you read about something and a child sees a word or a term they don't understand, well, then they'd have to physically go find a dictionary or find some other source to reference that. With technology, if you don't already have a hyperlink there, which you can immediately link on, they already have the internet at their fingertips, and they can understand those other concepts. And the places where digital learning is taking place, achievement is skyrocketing. And we know that if we meet children in an area where they're interested, they will learn. If we force them into an area where they're uninterested, it's going to be a struggle. And I think the state's had too many struggles for too long. So we need to begin looking at new ways of teaching children, and this is just one area. It's a suggested pilot program, and that's the way you figure out, as your question suggested, how we make sure that equipment doesn't get lost, stolen, or damaged. That's part of it. But we need to make sure that we test this with the students who really need it, see how it works, and build on the successes. So thank you guys for being here this morning.